Readers,
reviewers,
justices,
lend us your ears. Hello and welcome back to you for the very first time to the channel. Today we're excited to be doing a review for the very newly released book, The Tyranny of Kings by Richard Swan. This is book 2 in his series, which begins with The Justice of Kings. So first off, we'll start a bit about what this series is really about, and then obviously as we are talking about a book 2 of a series, there will be we won't be talking about spoilers for that book, but there will be light spoilers for the previous book, because of course we have to talk about the premise and where is book 2 kicking off.
Very light though, light as feathers.
Yes,
really.
Which means exactly like where did Justice of Kings leave off? So first up we'll say, what is this series really about?
So we follow some characters that are based around a justice called Sir Conrad Vonval, and he is kind of like a governmental officer, really, isn't he? A judge, jury, and executioner, and with him he has a few of his clerks.
Yes, so I love that this is kind of fancy but with a law twist. And that's not in a boring way, this is in a very fun way. It brings a mystery into a crime element, leading into the grander machinations of a great sprawling empire in, of course, a fantastical world. And so Conrad Vonval isn't just a wandering judge, jury, executioner. He also, to have got to his position of Emperor's Justice, has learnt a few magical skills, one including the Emperor's voice, which means it can compel people to tell the truth if they're not trained against it. So there are some very interesting bits tailored to the kind of that lawyer-esque style character, which I found really interesting in Justice of Kings. And this is a book that I think that people either love it or it won't click with them. It'll be one or the other, won't it? Some books I think most people will really enjoy, but this is one where if you really enjoy that kind of mystical element and that, as I said, crime, I think you will absolutely adore The Justice of Kings, and the same applies for The Tyranny of Faith. If you enjoy The Justice of Kings, I think you will absolutely adore The Tyranny of Faith. It takes what I really enjoyed about book 1 and then elevates it.
See, I think that if you're not really a big fan of that kind of lawyer aspect, you will still enjoy Justice of Kings and Tyranny of Faith, because it has those aspects of fantasy that we really love. You know, there are lots of different parts of fantasy, as well as really good character development and relationships here. So yeah, if you don't enjoy kind of books centering on law or those kind of aspects, then fear not, because you will still enjoy the series, because it has quite a broad range of different things going on. There is a mystery element, there is a thriller aspect to this series, but I definitely agree with Will there that Tyranny of Faith it takes what Justice of Kings did really well and then it builds upon it and adds to it. So I will just read the blurb off for Tyranny of Faith, and then we will talk about what we really enjoyed about it, and then we will go from there.
Exactly.
The Battle of Galen's Vale is over, but the war for the Empire's future has just begun. Concerned by rumours that the magistratum authority is waning, Sir Conrad Vonval returns to Sova to find the capital city gripped by intrigue and whispers of rebellion. In the Senate, patricians speak openly against the Emperor, while fanatics preach holy vengeance on the streets. Yet, facing down these threats to the throne will have to wait, for the Emperor's grandson has been kidnapped, and Vonval is charged with rescuing the missing prince. His quest will lead him and his allies Helena, Bressinger, and Sir Radomir to the southern frontier, where they will once again face the puritanical fury of Bartholomew Claver and his Templar Knights, and a dark power far more terrifying than they could have imagined.
So there we go, that is the blurb, and I for one was hooked. So as you can tell there, The Justice of Kings is about exploring the borderlands of the great Sovan Empire. Well, I say the great, but it seems like the foundations are beginning to crumble a bit. But anyway, Tyranny of Faith, it takes you to the heart of the Sovan Empire. We journey to the capital. Vonval has been away for a few years, so it's about acclimatizing to what has changed the political situation. The political machinations is much more of a game than it is on the frontier, where he wields more power than those around him. So those power dynamics and those changes are really interesting to explore. And I thought the cast of characters were really great, especially the core cast of Vonval, Helena, Bressinger, and Sir Radomir. Their interactions are absolutely wonderful. I love how their relationships are built upon, where we have what was forged in book 1, but then is taken in book 2. You have setbacks. It feels very real in the sense that people, they have conflicts with their friends and foes alike. It's not a simple relationship of, oh, I get on with my friends and oh, I dislike those against me. It is very nuanced and feels real and authentic, with kind of that relationship that really grows and retreats within itself through the trials and tribulations that they're put through, because they go through things they've never seen before, what they're not prepared for, and things that they have no idea how they would react in the moment. So yeah, I think that Richard Swan really caught kind of an aspect of the human condition in that aspect, in the Tyranny of Faith, how we react to great dangers. And I thought it was done really brilliantly, where it felt real. And of course, it is a fantasy book, so there are certain elements that do not feel real. But I think that Richard Swan did a great job in making it feel immersive. There's a saying where when you read a book or watch a film, it's about that you need to have that willing suspension of disbelief, but the author has to allow that, give you the parts where you can immerse yourself in a world. And I can say that, in my opinion, Richard Swan definitely provided those, and I thought this was a very immersive and engaging read.
Yeah, me too. I think the cast of characters was particularly strong. You've had 2 books to kind of acclimatise, to figure out how these characters work, to grow alongside them, and to have seen and experienced what they have seen and experienced. And it really adds your attachment to the characters, twicefold, definitely. I think particularly in this book, the cast was stronger. You feel those bonds more keenly. And there is lots and lots of plot points with the characters that are really, really involved in, and the stakes are very high. So as you get towards the end, there is a kind of a layer of tension that builds, similar to book 1. I think the pacing of book 1, the beginning was probably the weakest aspect. The middle section was really good, and then the final third was perfect. And the same here again. I think the beginning starts off quite slow, and I understand why it does, because it does pay off at the end. The middle is really intriguing. There is a slight dip just towards the last third, and then I think the final third is again perfect. As I said, I understand why they start slow, because you are learning, the reader is learning alongside Helena, the main character. I really love her voice. She's a very fresh fantasy protagonist, really, I think. And I love that her kind of, her role within her group is very different to many other fantasy books that we would have read so far. As book 2 is centred in very different places to book 1, you are kind of experiencing the world building, to a new degree, somewhere you haven't seen before. And I really like Richard Swan's choice in that he's taking you somewhere else. Sometimes lots of fantasy, it stays in kind of the same few realms, so you feel very safe, but you don't feel like the waters are safe where these characters go. Sova is a great big capital city, much akin to Rome or Paris, and the machinations there are very intriguing. And then you are going on, kind of trying to find the kidnapper of the prince, and it's really, really exciting, and I love the way that it unfolds. The fantasy aspects are particularly strong. There is a feat of, the aspect of necromancy and other dimensions, which I really, really enjoyed reading about. And yeah, me too. I think it was written perfectly by Richard Swan, and it just added to the tension. And I love that it feels real. There is realism there, and then if Richard Swan throws in these fantastical aspects that just completely remind you. They hook you in, they reel you in, and they really do remind you that you are in a dangerous fantasy world where nothing is what the eye sees. So I really, really enjoyed Tyranny of Faith. I think it probably edges book 1 for me. I think my attachment to Helena has grown, and I did really, really feel the tension towards the end of the book. And it sets up book 3 absolutely wonderfully. And I think Richard Swan's a very, very capable writer, very talented writer. And I, as I said earlier, the cast were just so much fun to read about.
Very nice, Ed. And just building on what you said there, I also really agree with everything you said. This felt like a very rewarding book to read, because Richard Swan has a lot of hooks that he plants in book 1, and you reap the rewards in book 2. Those mysteries that, as I said, really hook you, and he plants them all around the place, so they're really intriguing you. You've got some that come to fruition in book 2, some that take a very different turn from what you're expecting, some that you're not even expecting to be revealed, and there's a revelation you didn't even know you're waiting for, which have large implications on the plot or character development and the relationships. and then there are still loads that I'm just willing to read book 3 already, because as Ed said, book 3 is set up brilliantly, where I have extremely high hopes for this finale to the series, because whilst a lot happens at the end of book 2, and it's certainly not, it doesn't feel like that middle book syndrome, because a lot happens and it feels like its own book, but then there's also, you can tell it's just going to rise, those stakes are rising to a big climax in book 3. And also just say, at the end of book 1, Justice of Kings, I thought that climactic conclusion was incredible. The way that he built towards that increased attention, and then the action was brilliant. And the same in book 2. I think it kind of follows that same order of events, as he said, where I think the beginning is not weak, but it's probably, compared to the rest of the book, it takes a little while to get into as you're becoming refreshed with the world, and then it builds and builds and builds to a huge conclusion, which is extraordinary. It's one that I think is book 1 and 2 have 2 of the best endings to books that I've read in fantasy, so definitely stick with it. It's so rewarding and so satisfying, and yeah, I cannot wait for book 3.
Yeah, and I think I'll just jump on there about the characters again. I think the characters really, I loved how they were flawed, and I did feel like I was a part of their friendship. I was getting annoyed by the character motivations and their actions as well, and then I was really liking some of the aspects as well. So, and I think because Richard Swan was able to make me feel a lot as I read, I think he had a really a job well done. He had a very successful book because of my involvement, that I felt that I was really involved in the actual book, in the plot as well. So yeah, it's a great read. Can't wait to read number 3 of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy.
Yeah,
I believe it's a trilogy.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. And if you have read The Tyranny of Faith and The Justice of Kings, do head over. The Library of Alexandria had a spoiler chat with Richard Swan, the author himself, and it's a really engaging and really interesting chat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed listening to all of that. So if you have read it, do head over to watch that. I'll put a link somewhere, and hopefully in the description below. And if you haven't read these, then read them, because we are advocating for people to read these, because we both think that it was a great book, and book 1 was also really entertaining. And so read them, and then you can watch the chat. You've got something to look forward to. But anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching today. Today we're talking about The Tyranny of Faith, and it's a big thumbs up from the both of us.
Oh, yeah.
And we hope that you read it. Please do let us know if you've read book 1 in the comments below, or if you're planning to read this. I do believe that there are signed bookplate editions available at the Broken Binding. Ooh. So I'll put a link to that below. And we've also got a 10% discount code you can use. So, yeah, it's a win-win, isn't it?
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
100%.
It's a win-win-win.
So, yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Let us know in the comments below, have you read any books from this series? Will you think you picked them up? Will you pick them up? So please let us know. Hope to see you again very soon.
Truth and Courage, the Brothers Gwyn.
Truth and Courage from the Brothers Gwyn.